Here's how to make a parenting agreement for your queer family. I'm a member of a three-parent family. Myself and my husband live with our co-parent. We're raising our child together, and we're expecting our second in June. Before we went about conceiving our first, we sat down together to create a parenting agreement. This document outlined our roles and responsibilities as co-parents, and also was an opportunity to discuss our shared goals, values, visions for this parenting journey we're about to embark on. This is something that I think is useful for a lot of families, not just multi-parent homes like ours. And I really encourage anybody who is expecting or starting to try or even already has kids to consider making a document like this. The first thing you want to do when making your parenting agreement is set aside intentional time for yourself and your co-parent or co-parents to talk about what this document is going to do for you, what you're looking to get out of it. During this process, it's great to clarify your own roles and intentions with each other. If you are conceiving a child for the first time, like we were, and you're in a queer family dynamic perhaps, you might want to talk about who is legal parents, who is expected to step into the role of parenting. And sometimes documents like this are useful for people who are using a donor or surrogate as well, to make sure that there is clear lines over whether or not that donor or surrogate is going to adopt a parent title, or if they'll be more like an uncle, auntie, or whatever, what you want that relationship to look like. If you are planning to all live and co-parent together, then you want to look at the legal system where you live. Where we are in Ontario, you can have up to 4 people on the child's birth certificate, so long as you have a parenting agreement already in place before the child is born. You may want to have other conversations in this initial discussion about what does co-parenting mean to each other? Do you all have an equal say in decision making? Do you all have equal time with the child? Are you going to cohabitate together permanently? Do you ever plan to live together? Do you all have shared financial responsibilities? And if everyone is already living together, you might want to also imagine different scenarios, like what if somebody moves out? What if somebody enters a new relationship? What if somebody gets seriously ill? What if someone passes away? What if somebody breaks up? Go through all these what if scenarios. I recommend that you don't try to have this conversation all at once, and instead set up a regular meeting date. It could be weekly, bi-weekly, every few months, even every couple of years, whatever works best for you. Give yourself time and space to reflect on what matters to you when it comes to co-parenting, what you want your relationship to your child to look like. If you don't make this kind of stuff clear, especially if you're in a situation where somebody is being a donor, a surrogate, or is a non-biological parent, you could be setting yourself up for problems down the road if there's any type of conflict. I know right now it might feel like you all get along great and there would be no reason to ever even consider potential conflict between each other, but the point of the parenting agreement is to have those tough conversations now when you feel level-headed and when you like each other, rather than when tensions are high. Think of it almost like a parenting prenup. You may also want to consider consulting with a family lawyer or some other kind of advisor, just to make sure that your parenting agreement reflects the laws and regulations in your region. I also recommend that you look at guidelines for separating parents in your region, because you will probably find there are a lot of questions and ideas in there that might not have just occurred to you on their own. So once you've had a lot of these conversations about who you are to each other, what you want your relationship to your child to look like, this is when you can start putting it down on the page. Using those initial conversations, create headings for each topic that is most important to you in the parenting agreement, and write down exactly what you want to agree to. For instance, you may make a heading called living arrangements, and in the subheading state, we co-parents intend to live together for the duration of our child's childhood. You could have a follow-up statement that says, should there be conflict that causes separation of the co-parents, we agree to always live within 1 hour of each other and allow equal custody so long as it's in the best interest of the child. Some topics that you may want to include in your parenting agreement are things like living arrangements, as I stated, legal parentage, who's going to be listed on the birth certificate, who wants to be recognized as a legal parent, does anybody need to not claim legal parentage so that another person can? This is the case in some places where gay couples cannot both be parents unless the donor or surrogate renounces their parentage. Another topic to include may be decision making and authority. How do you make decisions? Are they made collectively? Are they made by consensus? Do all parents have equal say in things like health, education, religion, etc.? You may have subheadings where you get into more of those details. Another topic to include is financial responsibilities. Do you have an equal split of finances together? Do you have an equitable split? How do you share day-to-day costs for your child, childcare, medical expenses, education savings? Do you have a joint bank account? You may want to have a whole section dedicated to emotional and cultural parenting and parenting expectations. What values and traditions matter to you? How do you want to navigate extended relatives and their own expectations there? This section, you could also include topics like, how do you plan to discipline your child? How do you plan to manage potential abuse? Would you be willing to call out your co-parent? Are you willing to go to therapy to work on your issues if you end up hurting your kid, even unintentionally? Of course, nobody wants to think they're going to be that parent or that they're going to co-parent with someone who could hurt their kids. But it's important, like I said, to have those conversations early and talk about what would happen if or when you were in a scenario where the child's well-being was at risk because you couldn't work on your stuff. You also may want to have a section on communication and conflict resolution. What do you do if there is a dispute between you? Would you consider mediation? Would you go to therapy together? Do you want to have regular check-ins with each other? We have personally found it helpful to have a standing monthly house meeting where we talk about our feelings with each other, but also like chores, projects going on at home, extracurriculars for our kid, all that good stuff. The last thing you want to put in your agreement is how you're going to negotiate potential future changes to this document, whether or not you have any flexibility on it. And I recommend including a clause that allows for adjustments by consensus. There may be other topics that you want to include in your parenting agreement that I've not listed here. For instance, in ours, we had a whole section on food and nutrition, but it's really up to you. And I recommend, just like with those initial conversations about your roles and responsibilities, how that took place over, weeks and months, I advise that you do the same with your parenting agreement. Don't try to write it all in one go. Start with a draft of each section, hammer it out, then move to the next. You may find it takes a long time to get it all down, so I recommend starting early. It took us almost a year to really get to a place where we had an agreement that felt good and we were ready to sign off on. Once you feel good about it, you put your names at the bottom and you all sign them. I recommend that you get it witnessed or maybe even notarized, depending on how legal you're looking for it to be. And now you have your document. And this can be very useful, like I said, if you're going into a donor or surrogacy situation, if you're going into a co-parenting agreement, if you're having a multi-parent family, or if you're going through a separation now or even later on. You may find that you stick it in a folder and never look at it again, or perhaps you take it out once a year for an annual review to make sure it's still working for you. Or maybe you don't use it for a long time, but one day you really need it. But whatever the case, keep in mind that the value here is not just the document itself, but it's the process you went through to create it. In our experience, it was a foundational step in our journey into parenting that bonded us on a new level and committed us to this path. I hope that you find it equally as helpful. If you're looking for more of a template or you want a hands-on workshop for how to create a parenting agreement, I recommend you check out the LGBTQ Parenting Network in Toronto. That's the organization that got us thinking about parenting agreements and gave us a guideline on how to do it. Let me know in the comments if you've made a parenting agreement or if you're interested in making one and what you would include. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next week.